Varner, Superintendent.
Sandra Kidman.
Bob Candelaria, President, and Lynn Hoffman, Executive Assistant. We're set to go with this work study session. We'll go to the first item. This is a review of Director Coordinator Safety comparisons. This is a discussion item. Terry Mauer.
Governing Board President and members of the Governing Board community, I'm going to start sharing a screen with you. That way we can kind of talk through this. What we have is a history here that we've worked through starting in 2017-18. We looked at the certified salary schedule. We built a stepless certified salary schedule. And in the context of building that, we corrected what we called leapfrogging. And it cost the district about $50,000 to correct the certified staff, the teachers, who were coming to our district with years of experience, where our own teachers in PUSD were not given the years of service. So we did correct that. That was in 2017-18. And ongoing to this year, we still have that correction in place. In 18-19, we did an administrative salary schedule comparison and built a range for our administrative staff. So when we do advertise positions, that is in comparison with the state of Arizona, and we do stack favorably for administrative positions now in the state of Arizona. Earlier this year, there was a presentation with the classified salary comparison. And if you remember, we did have an issue where our bus drivers, because of the CDL that they hold, we were struggling to keep them and also recruit them. And so we reclassified that position. And I'm happy to say that we did recruit and retain bus drivers in that process. And so now I'm going to present through the certified and classified exempt, which we commonly call the directors and coordinators in our district. This does not mean we're done. We still do have our psychologists, our OT, PT. There's another group of employees that we will bring towards the beginning of next year as we do that comparison. But this one in particular is for the directors and coordinators. So as I start this and talk through it a little bit, I want to just let you know, in this context, our information source is the Arizona School Boards Association. They provide quite a bit of information with regards to comparisons across the state of Arizona. So I was able to their information source and then take only the slice of districts that are comparable to us. So student populations of about 1,000 up to about 5,000. And so with that, I want to go ahead then and show you. This.
Yep, to the blue button.
You press this when you're talking.
Yeah.
What about
Right
when
now,
you're
you need to. We can all hear you.
All right, so when we're looking at the document that I had shared with you, I have it up on the screen as well. There's a couple of things that will stand out quite quickly. They are highlighted. First, some positions that Page does not have, the staff development position and the food service position. Those would be director level positions. And also something to understand when we look at this, some of these titles may include other positions or other jobs in the description. So it may be the case when we look at like the business and finance, which is about the third one down, the range for that may include a title that says business and finance operations or assistant superintendent of business operations. So some of these nuances may cause the salaries to be different than what we see in PUSD. All right, we had that same consideration when we looked at the classified hourly, because we saw some of those salaries or some of those hourly rates were significantly different than Page, but the job descriptions were significantly different than Page. So let's kind of look through this. And remember, when we're looking at these salaries, we're looking at what Page currently has versus what the average in the state of a comparable district is. And these are published salaries for recruitment and retention. So when we look at a curriculum and instruction, we're looking at Page being above the average in both the minimum salary and then coming very close to the average for the maximum salary. It doesn't mean that there's not a significant, like you saw this with the superintendent one, there could be $110,000, $130,000 salary out there, but that may also come with the title Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, something to that effect. We see the special ed or the director of ESS, business and finance, human resources, transportation. And like I said, food service, we do not have a food service director. That is we use an outside source for that. Facilities, IT, and communications and PR. I did want to highlight that one. It's not highlighted on your sheet, but I want to highlight it as I talk through it. That is in our district an hourly position, and in other districts it is a salaried position. So that would be a discrepancy that we would see there. Grounds foreman. Then our Indian Education Director, that position isn't reported at the Arizona School Boards Association. They did not have a comparable piece. So if we wanted to really dig into that position, we would need to contact other districts that have that particular position in order to get their salary range. I did want to also speak through the three highlighted ones that are in yellow. So ELL and Gifted Coordinator, Preschool Coordinator, and CTE Director. Those three are 10-month positions in Page for our district. And also in other districts, those may be district level positions that supervise more than one program. So when we look at the Career and Technical Education Director, there may be multiple high schools that director oversees. And in Page, the director for Career and Technical Education oversees Page High School. And then also we look at security, maintenance foreman, and then the executive secretary is a position that is in almost every district. However, the salaries range widely. That's why you see kind of a blanket salary that's there, because that is a very specialized position that's there, right? Any questions with that part?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Why is our HR position so much higher than the average?
Let's go back. So when we look at that position, that could be the case that in previous or current, that the range for that position was generated due to educational advancement. Could be that the individual is supervising other departments. It could be an assistant superintendent position. Those ranges are built for that, for all of those considerations.
The only thing I'd say is that just looking at this over the last couple days or few days, that this puts us in a good competitive position with almost anybody around the state. So that bodes well. But like you said, there are some obvious things that we may have to consider later on in terms of 10-month versus 12-month, but like there's other differences there too that you mentioned. It's good information.
That's really the crux of the salary comparison when we look at recruiting individuals to page. When we talked through not only our certified teaching staff, our administrative staff, our classified hourly staff, what is a good entry-level position starting salary, and then what would it look like if we were to try to recruit individuals who have years of experience, significant years of experience in that position. And I think with this salary ranges for these positions, it sets us up very well. We see that with the instructional staff, we see that with the administrative staff, and we talked about it with the classified staff, that in almost all of our positions for the classified hourly staff, we would struggle to recruit an individual who has an amount of experience in that position. That is the reality of the way the classified hourly staff salary schedule is built. So we see that quite prevalent in that salary schedule. The last piece, and I do want to highlight this for you.
Barry, I have a question for you, if you don't mind, please.
Yes, sir.
With these salaries, and I assume we took into consideration the location and housing calc and built in a little bit something extra for that also. Did we not?
So no, none of our salary schedules take into a cost of living or COLA adjustment. They are built straight from previous salaries that are in place. And then when we take and look across the state of Arizona, if we're way out of a range, then we would make an adjustment. But there's not a cost of living adjustment that is any part of any of the Page Unified School District salary schedules. So the last thing I do want to share is the last bullet point here on the presentation, which is something that we might want to consider, and something I'm just putting out there now, as once we complete this process in the coming next governing board meeting or the following governing board meeting, we would bring all the salary schedules back after the raises were requested, approved. We'd build the new salary schedules to bring them back so that we could start using them for advertisement. So when we think about the teacher salary schedule, we know that there is two parts to it. We know that there is a years of service, and then that there's an educational component. When we think about the classified hourly, we know that there is an amount of experience, and then also there is steps that are available through education and professional development in that position. When we look at our administrative salary schedule, we know that that salary schedule has not only the administrative credentials, but it also has, if they had a doctorate degree, it honors that. So the last piece to this is, in this group of employees, the classified and certified directors and coordinators, there is not an incentive and there is not a consideration for advancement on the salary schedule due or because an individual has professionally developed themselves. So an example of this would be if we took our information technology director, or we took any of the positions, they all come with a minimum level with which we would recruit somebody. Some of them are bachelor's, some of them are master's degrees, some of them don't require a degree. And then when that employee continues to advance themselves educationally, there's not that incentive that is in the other salary schedules. So one thing I would ask the governing board to kind of think about is, what would it look like, or what would it be if we did put a consideration in that salary schedule for educational advancement? And we can bring some examples at the next governing board meeting just to kind of think about, but that is something that is a structure in others. And we can also think Mr. Franklin about what a cost of living adjustment would look like as well for all salary schedules, knowing that recruiting to Page because of the housing costs and the cost of living is something that's substantial.
Okay, board members, any further comments? Dr. Maurer, thank you so much for that good information. And we'll look forward to dealing with this to draw good folks to Page.
Thank you guys very much for your time, and you guys have a wonderful evening and stay safe.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item B, audit report and report from Auditor General's Office, one we always look forward to. Vindi Werhande.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Here. Governing Board President, Mr. Candelaria, and Governing Board members, and our community members. Today, we're going to talk about our 18-19 fiscal year audit findings. So, first up, we have some USFR compliance findings. Here we have accounting records where we had a coding fund code adjustment that we have to make, where we hadn't coded first things first grant as a state grant previously, but but now we are doing that. Supporting documentation for all payroll journal entries. This is where we were missing some e-pars for some of the transfers that happened between our schools. And in the next finding is cash and revenues. District's revolving fund bank account exceeded $5,000 was the finding. This for about 10 years. We've had our revolving fund bank account at $10,000, but this is a new change the auditors requested, and it was highlighted as a finding. And under property control, district's capital asset listing did not include some of our capital leases. Also, the next was the district did not reconcile previous year's June 30th capital asset listings to the current year listing, which gave us some variances in the beginning balances. And the other was district could not provide documentation that public surplus items dispersed were made in compliance with the Arizona Administrative Code. Since then, we have taken action to correct these findings. Under payroll, individual personnel files did not include appropriate supporting documentation for pay, was the finding, where this was out of a sample of 50 files the auditors checked. We missed for a couple of our employees who actually retired at that point. We missed I-9s is what the finding was. And under technology, our disaster recovery plan was not tested at least annually, was a finding in the 19 year, but for fiscal year 20, in July, we made sure that we tested our disaster recovery plan. And under student attendance reporting from the samples selected under elementary and high school, absences were not calculated correctly, was a finding. And 4 of the 10 entries reviewed, district did not maintain sufficient verifiable documentation of Arizona residency, was a finding. Since then, we had made sure that our team is on top of this and made the corrections. Under transportation support, for the transportation route report, the district calculated eligible students based on the first 100 days, but however, we did not use the average of both AM and PM student counts to submit for this report. Since then, we have, for fiscal year 20, made the correction to make sure we use the average of both AM and PM student counts. And The next is our single audit findings, which we had two. The one was internal controls over capital assets. Here, it was highlighted that the district did not have adequate internal controls in place to prepare complete and accurate capital asset schedules, which we have taken very seriously and have set up plans to make sure we are meeting this requirement. Internal controls over payroll was the other single audit finding. District lacked proper review procedures to ensure documentation was maintained to support the amounts paid to employees. This is where we had paid some stipends without EPARs in place. So we have now made sure for the fiscal year 20 that we are very thoroughly following up with setting up EPARs for each of everything that we pay out. And these findings were repeat findings from fiscal year 2018. Therefore, we are on a corrective action plan with an anticipated completion date of June 30th, 2020. Do we have any questions on this?
Vinny, this was with the transition from previous business manager to you.
Correct. I joined in March of 2018. Yes, these findings were reflected from July of 18. Yes.
Thank you.
We do not have a business manager. Correct. Okay. If any other questions or concerns?
Yeah. Yep. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Remind me who was in charge before you came in?
Mr. Kevin Dickerson.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
And as I see your report, the only repeats are the internal controls over capital assets and over payroll.
Correct.
Okay, and of these audit findings that you mentioned, this may be a dumb question, but are all of these regulatory in nature, or are they best practices?
I want to say the USFR compliance findings will be, they're all regulatory.
Okay. So right now, we've made the effective changes, and then they'll follow up at just their next audit?
Correct. They have already started the next fiscal year 20 audit, where remote processing.
And does each one of these findings have an identified gatekeeper, a physical person, or are you the person?
So we tie them to each director. For example, for transportation, we do discuss, and actually in the audit, auditors called them in, and we all discussed these findings with each of our directors. But for the business office functions, yes, including capital assets and payroll, I will be responsible.
Right. Good. The one concern I always have about audits is that when you change directors, you have new people come in, that somehow some of these things fall through the cracks. I'm not saying that's what's happened, but like I said, when we get folks changing out, this should just be part and parcel of the, I guess, if you will, the management of change that's implemented.
In the past, I agree. In the past, it looks like there was a disconnect in most of these things. In the transition, it seems like it got lost. But we are now making sure everything's in place for a smooth transition. If a director were to leave the district, we will make sure that all of these findings are communicated and followed through and corrected.
Any other questions, folks? Vindy, thank you so much. Appreciate the report.
Thank you. So then we can go into our next item if you're okay with that? Or
The next item I have up is, and maybe I'm missing something. It says continuous learning plan.
Mr. Candelaria, I also have another presentation.
Oh.
About the, shall I go ahead?
Let's go ahead and proceed.
Okay, thank you. This data is from the Arizona School District Spending Report for fiscal year 2019, published by our Auditor General's Office. Page Unified here in this report is identified as a medium large district in size. Students attending we are at 2,500 students attending. And we have a special education population of 15%, English learner population of 4%, poverty rate of 21%, and free and reduced meal eligibility of 75%. To start with, I have, if we look at our instructional spending percentage, we are at 47.1% in comparison to the state of Arizona. We are not far off in our classrooms spending of 64.2%. And in our non-classroom spending, which is 35.8%, is higher than the state of Arizona. Where we looks like in our non-classroom spending, under plan operation, we are at a high, our numbers are high at 14.4%. Sorry. And if you look at now in our peer group average instructional spending percentage, we're at the bottom here with 47.1%, whereas our peer groups are spending in an average of over 53% in the instructional spending category.
Hey, Vindy.
Yes.
Explain all the items in the instructional spending so everyone understands.
Yes.
Because sometimes there's certain things in there that certain districts do that's not included, and some things that we don't do that are included. For example,
I agree.
Secretarial staff is included in administration costs. You know, of course, we have you know, making sure that student support is explained and instructional support explained, because sometimes these don't come with an appendix to explain each one of those categories. So,
so yes, I have in my slides down here, we have what instructional spending is about. It consists of classroom personnel, general instructional supplies, instructional aids, activities, tuition payments. So that is under operational spending. So, and I also want to share with you what the per pupil spending by operational area. There, then we can actually go down in my presentation and you will see what consists of administration and plan operations, food services, transportation expenses, what is in those areas. Under the operational area, spending by operational area, our per pupil spending is higher than our peer and the state's average. So under the non-operational area, it shows that we are spending more on our students. So that shows us a per pupil spending of $11,159 in comparison to our peers and state average. So like Mr. Varner said, again, here I'm showing you what the instructional spending consists of. And if you go here, non-instructional spending talks about administration, that's salaries and benefits for superintendent, principals, business manager, and business office staff, human resources, administrative technology services, and also other costs as well as the governing board expenses. And plant operations consists of salaries and benefits for other related equipment repair, building maintenance, custodial services, groundskeeping, and utilities, as well as property insurance. Food service, it shows us the salaries and benefits, food supplies, and other costs related to operating, transporting, and serving meals and snacks. And under transportation, salaries, benefits, and other costs related to maintaining buses and students to and from school and school activities. Student support services consist of salaries and benefits for attendance clerks, social workers, counselors, nurses, speech pathologists, and other costs related to these support services to students. Instruction support services, salaries and benefits for curriculum director, special education director, teacher trainers, media specialists, and instructional related IT staff, and also cost related to assisting instructional staff in delivering instruction is what instruction support services is for. And under the non-operational spending category, we have land and buildings, equipment, interest, and other expenses. As you can see, so if we go down here, it talks about operational measures relative to peer averages. Under operational criteria of administration, cost per pupil, our district is rated very high in comparison to our peer and state average. Under the operational area of plant operations, our cost per square foot is rated comparable at $5.99. But our square footage per student is rated very high. Food service cost per meal is rated comparable in comparison to our peer and state average. And transportation cost per mile is rated very high, even though our cost per rider is rated comparable. When they say very high, for example, for here, when our cost per pupil under administration is considered very high, they actually say that is higher than peer average by more than 15%, is what that calculation, according to this report. And if we go down to percentage point change in spending by operational area, here they're comparing fiscal year 2019 spending to fiscal year 2014. Our instruction, student support, and instruction support looks like we are spending less than we did in year 2014. Under our administration and plan operation food service, transportation costs are higher than we had in fiscal year 2014, is what this graph shows us. Average teacher salary and other measures. Here, the district average salary of $51,639 for fiscal year 19 is not far off from the state average of $52,441. And as you can see, district amount of Prop 301 had increased over the years to about 6,700. And students per teacher has increased in fiscal year 2019, and average years of teacher experience looks like we do have some experienced teachers, which shows us a 9.3. Percentage of teachers in the first 3 years has decreased by up to 21% in comparison to 2017 year. Here, this data shows us students who pass state assessment, and this data is from our AZ Merit test results. And on a positive note here, in this report, our graduation rate for fiscal year 18 shows as 80%. That concludes this report. Is there any questions for me?
I would like to encourage everyone to go on this website because you could click on certain things. It gives you better explanations. For example, a lot of people just look at this as apples and apples. It's really not apples to apples. For example, our transportation mile, other than Chinley, is the highest in the state. 16,000 miles on the road, so we use a lot more equipment to fix buses and those kind of things, and mileage. And then of course administrative cost. Most of our peer districts don't have counselors at the elementary schools, deans, and those kind of things. So it's a really good study, but I would strongly encourage you to dig deeper so you make sure you understand each indicator and how our peers may not have certain positions that we have for certain reasons. Most of our peers do not have a student support service team, for example, Indian education, those kind of things. So dig a little deeper, ask some questions, be open to your feedback after you go into that website. Fendi, would you share the website with everyone, please?
Yes, I can do that. I will email the website link to all of you. Sure, I can do that.
I'm sorry, I forgot to unmute. So I'll send it to me and I'll send it to the board team so they could dig a little deeper, because this is a 30,000 foot view as you peel back the onions, and you can kind of see some of our spending trends over the last 10 years on that website. So it's a good website to study and look at. So thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Yeah, Vindy, I'd like to thank you for that. These are things we've talked about in the past, the administrative reasons for why it's higher. The one thing that I'll just mention that we haven't talked about in a while, that was one of the topics of discussion when we started realizing how much room we have for every kid. I love that. I mean, we've been exercising spacing for a long time, but we have a very large building capacity, and so there we talked about how to combine at some point in time a school or whatever, so that but who knows how it's going to look in the future. But that's something that we should keep on the table to have a discussion in terms of the amount of floor space we have, because that is by far one of the biggest things that stands out when we start talking about comparative and peer group, or actually to anybody in the state. We just have a whole bunch of building space. Any other comments, folks? Okay, if Vindy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bob, can I say something real quick?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yes, yes.
Sorry, I was a little slow on muting. I would like us to maybe look into our space and see if we can convert some of that space into teacher housing.
Well, there you go. We'll turn it into a regular
Because-
VRBO page unified school district.
Yeah, but think about it. We have
No,
all the
I hear
space,
you.
and we're lacking housing. So
Yes.
it would be interesting to at least look into it and see if there's anything like that, or if there's a possibility of doing that.
Well, I really grab onto that, because those are the kind of thinking we do need to have when we're considering going forward what page will continue to look like. And no, that's a real good thought. So yeah, we need to hang on to that and talk and see what it would take to get some housing that would be practical and maintainable. But yeah, good comment. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Go ahead and unmute.
As we're preparing these budgets, one thing I was just kind of wondering about is the 1.1 shortfall. We hear so much about it. How are we prepared and working towards and staying within our means as we begin to be creative?
And I think what you're referring to is the lack of the Navajo generating
Yeah,
station
right.
funds and those kind of things that we were
Yes.
estimating about $1 million.
Right.
We have had that conversation in terms of picking up other funds, but Vindy, would you like to take a crack, or Dr. Werner?
Yeah, a lot of the funding from Navajo went to the Navajo Generation Station, went to equalization fund at the state, so, and through Coconino County as well. So that money is actually dispersed throughout the state. We do get some of the property tax money through the local means, but state equalization, since it was passed in '92, I believe it was, the lawsuit from Roosevelt versus C. Diane Bishop. So there's a primary tax and a secondary tax. We do get hit, especially on our bonding capacity, because of Navajo generation plant really hurt us hard on the property side of things. So we did the 1.1 is not directly to the district, but we do get hit, absolutely get hit. And so the other, we do make up some of the funding through our grants, and of course the CARES Act that just got passed. We'll see some money coming to Page. My biggest concern is accounting for our students during this time. I'm afraid that because we don't do attendance lately, we don't really have a true number of our ADM right now. You hear things. I actually know a few folks that went on to the online virtual academies, and hopefully we'll recapture those folks. I also know some people left the area during the high spike of COVID to live with other family members. Hopefully they'll come back when things settle down. But it's really going to be hard to account for our ADM until all our kids are back, and that's the bigger concern that I have right now is what will our student counts look like in the fall?
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody have anything else for Vindy? Vindy, thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Let's go ahead and move on to item C. It's a continuous learning plan. Larry Wallen.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. How do you like this meeting? Is this a normal thing that we just do every day, been doing for years?
Yeah, it's something I do every day.
That's what it's about, the new normal. What's that going to look like? And that's why I brought to your attention the fact that we need to begin to look at a continuous learning plan. What's going to happen if we open school in June? What's going to happen if we don't open school in June for summer school? Is it going to be jumpstart in July? What's going to happen when we open in August? Are we going to be walking around in August all wearing masks with a water bottle of hand sanitizers on our shoulder? That's what we need to look ahead at. We need to look and see how we're going to handle these things and what we're going to do with it. We need to focus on how we're going to do essential learning for students. Less is more. We need to be flexible and ready to adapt when the needs arise. And we need to, so I can share my screen. We need to prepare for all that and get ready to, I had it right there, ready to move in that direction, because it's going to be different. Are we going to have virtual learning? Is it going to be face-to-face? I've seen plans from the state that have talked about you bring in half the students one day and half the students the next day to try to meet the social distancing requirements. What's virtual learning going to look like for teachers? How do they build connections? How do they get students committed? all those things. So what I'm putting together is a task force that's going to explore all those opportunities in terms of a continuous learning plan. We will look at physical reentry. We'll look at social and emotional well-being of students and staff, because the screen makes it different. It's not the same thing as having the teacher there interacting with us when we're on that virtual learning. Looking at things from an academic perspective. What does virtual learning look like? How do you engage students? How do you keep them attentive and all those things? So working with a group of teachers, we're going to put together a continuous learning plan for the district that will help us drive forward this summer and in the fall. And the information I gave you, there's a continuous learning task force guidance document. And that's what you want to look at in terms of, this one is from the state of Kansas as an example. Let me see if I can share it again. This one is from the state of Kansas. And you see, those of us, I would not be a good candidate to fly an airplane at this point. But we will be looking at professional guidelines, learning to prepare for continuous learning. This is an example. I have an example from the Iowa State Department of Education, an example from the Kansas State Board of Education, an example from the Buckeye Elementary School District down in Phoenix, an example from the Pendergast Elementary School District in Phoenix, getting us ready for that new reality. You know, I was talking to a friend Sunday, and he said, you know, with all the online learning now that's taking place, all the students have left NAU, gone home or gone wherever, and everything's going to be, what happens if in the fall, NAU says we're going to be online learning a whole year? All those dorms are sitting there, all those facilities are sitting there. What's all that impact going to be? You just mentioned a question about housing and some of the buildings and stuff. So how's all that going to go together and have us in a position where we are ready to move? We want to be nimble. If the governor says you can have school open July 1st, we want to be ready. We got to plan for that. If he says no, you have to open in August, we want to be ready for that. If he says no, we're going to open in December, we want to be ready for that. And what does all that look like? So I just wanted to bring this. I gave you 3 documents to look at: the National Standards for Quality Online Teaching, because that's different than face-to-face teaching. And then looking at, we'll write a plan based off of the Kansas model using their template to look at and work forward with that. So that's just to say this is what's coming. I would say probably by possibly the end of May or June, we should be ready to move forward with that, looking at our computer capacity, our Wi-Fi capacity, and considering the fact that, you know, we have quite a number of rural students who are out there with no internet. How do we deal with that? Sending paper packets, is that working or not working? So what is the professional learning? How do we teach teachers to deal with this in a new way? And so that's, if you go through this document, look at it, it's got some real interesting questions. One of the things when I hit it that was going through it that was interesting to me is one of the things in a virtual learning environment is that teachers need to post their office hours so that students know when they can contact the teacher. So let's say from 10 to 2, the teacher is available either through phone, through virtual learning, through Google, whatever it is. And so we set all that up related to that. Look, the question I have in front of you, do 12th grade students still have to meet all graduation requirements? Well, this year, yes, we know they do. What about next year, in year 2 of the pandemic? What happens if all surges back again? So again, this is this alerting you that we're getting ready to put a plan together that will take us into the future, and it'll probably have about 3 tracks. Like I said, opening in July, opening in August, opening in next January, whatever it's going to look like to see where we are. So with that, just give you an idea, look through this document. It's got a lot of ideas in it. We're pulling those other resources, and we'll have a plan for you probably by the end of May or beginning of June. Thank you, Mr. President.
Board members, any comments, questions for Mr. Wallen?
Mr. Wallen, I have a
Did you hear that?
I heard that. That's a great question. Now, it's interesting you asked that because
I think in order to address anything having to do with learning, first of all, we need to see how all the social isolation, individual families with not coming to town, they're faced with so many things and it impacts the students. Children hear the discussion. So I was wondering, we really need to look at the social, emotional areas before we even address all the things that you just outlined.
and this morning I was in a ASCD webinar called Learning Schools During the Virus Crisis. And it's about mental health implications. For example, one of the things is to provide resiliency to students. So the first thing you do is you have to promote a sense of safety. How do you promote a sense of safety through virtual learning? How do you promote calm? How do you promote a sense of self and collective efficacy? How do you promote connectiveness? How do you promote hope? And so I went through that webinar focusing on those things you're talking about, and have actually a PowerPoint that they presented to us, and looking at that, building that connections and putting that together. So that is a big part of it, because again, the distance with this virtual learning changes the dynamics between the student and teacher. One of the things we know when we reflect on our education is that teacher made a big difference for us. We all remember those teachers. Well, if it's virtual, now you're comparing it to TV, now you're taking on a different venue. So how does all that fit together in building that quality classroom that will cause our students to want to be a part of it?
Thank you.
Larry, I just want to say thank you for sharing that presentation with us. I think it is very important to see the different documents that is provided to us, and to actually see in black and white what opportunities are yet to come. But more importantly, I mean, I think that I was just scrolling through it and reading through some of the documents, and it definitely does touch base on a lot of the virtual learning, especially with rural communities. And the, you know, some families don't have devices or even internet capacity. I mean, all of that, it definitely touches base on it. And I hope that I honestly wish that we had this information currently available, you know, for us to utilize at this current time, because I feel like there's a disconnection with our Native American students that are out on the Navajo Nation. So more importantly, I do look forward to seeing what is going to be available, and looking forward to all of the new plans coming. Thank you.
Mr. Wallen, thank you so much. We'll look forward to that. And of course, as you've brought up, and we've talked quite a bit, what this has really exposed is our biggest weaknesses. But also we're finding some strengths through this. And when you and I had a conversation a while back, we can point out the fact that we've got huge holes in the internet on the reservation. But when we're dealing with this kind of pandemic and the kind of thing that's going on the reservation, there are top priorities on the reservation. And I would say that internet connectivity may be falling down into the third or fourth spot. First, running water, electricity, the ability to get to the outer areas, and those kind of things continually raise their heads. But this is so important for our educational community. So I too look forward to, you know, when we have another discussion about this. Any other comments? Okay, let's go on to item D. This is a discussion regarding community comments, questions, agenda items. And this was raised, Lynn Hoffman, I think, between her and Mr. Wall, they got a hold of something that was coming out of Flagstaff Unified School District in terms of how they conduct their school board meetings. We are conducting school board meetings, no call to the public at this point, no addressing questions or anything else. Again, what is the new norm? If we all get back to work and are back together in the boardroom and all of those kind of things in the future, then no issue. But the only thing I wanted to pose is, do we want to open in some way or find a way to allow public to send their comments because normally what we will have is we have a courtesy call to the public for 3-minute comments. So I'm just wanting to throw that open, not expecting a long discussion about this, but something for us to think about so that we can actually give the public an opportunity just to state their comments and concerns. And as per open meeting agenda, of course, nothing on that wouldn't be anything on the agenda. It'd be something that they would be given opportunity to state. We could either receive it and then read it, again, a 3-minute time limit that we've set, or any other conditions that you might see fit. So anybody on the board have any comments on this? At this point, we're leaving it as is, but this is just an opportunity. If you have something that you'd like to share that you think might be better, or just keep the status quo.
Rob, this is Ed.
So I think for sake of transparency, I think there needs to be some type of process. We do have questions that are posed to myself almost on a daily, weekly basis by community, and I think an opportunity to send something written either to Ms. Hoffman or myself during this period of time could be read, could be stated in a open meeting part. Of course, there'll need to be some type of timeline, maybe by noon the day of the meeting or something where we can receive community questions, concerns. Of course, certain questions, if you're following the open meeting laws, that we can't respond to, but if they have a general comment that they would like to share with us, I think transparency is important. So we can always work on the process of what that could look like and how we can communicate that out. But I think for the sake of transparency, I think that would be a good thing to do.
I like that idea also. I think it keeps us open to the community, and they know they have the opportunity to give their feedback, and that we're still willing to indulge that feedback. I think this could be a positive thing for us.
I think that is a great idea to have public comments available to the public to address some of the concerns. I know there are quite a few concerns out there, but how do we address them and so forth? So it is important that we continue to have this opportunity for the public to address their concerns.
One last comment, Mr. President, if we look at the back wall there where the announcements and comments, if we make sure that whatever we do, that's a part of the header, because we need to be careful with using personal names and things like that without following that protocol. So we need to make sure the community understands we still have to follow that announcement and comment section, and some of the comments and announcements they may have, we may not be able to address during this particular board meeting that they make the comment. So making sure we follow the policy as well is also important. But that information could be vetted by Ms. Hoffman and myself to make sure that they're following the criteria that is set to be read in a board meeting. Otherwise, we just have to call them and say, this is the reason this cannot be read in a meeting, and that could be on me to make that decision. So I have no problem with that as well.
Yes, I think this would be a very good opportunity. We've been reaching out to the communities because of distance, them working one reason or another. This would give them the opportunity to log on and tell us what they have to share with us. Excellent idea.
No, well, I think I hear a consensus. Ms. Skidman, do you have something?
No, I would just like to see us, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I would like us to figure out how we can still entertain public comments. Whatever that looks like, but be open to them.
I like the comments that have been made, and Dr. Varner suggested a mechanism. I'd like us to just go ahead and proceed because within our normal agenda, we do have room for public comment, and so we could keep it within the context. The only thing we have to develop is just a mechanism, and also what Dr. Varner pointed out was that we do have certain laws that we have to follow in terms of what can be and what cannot be said. So we would take opportunity to vet the questions, but 90% of them probably would go right through, and we would just have they would be read during the comments period. And again, we could hold it to 3 minutes or whatever seems reasonable. So if you give us the latitude to just go ahead and work on that mechanism, we'll try to exercise that for our next open meeting, if that's okay. All right, I think I heard a consensus to go ahead and move with that. So thank you very much. Item E, the last thing on our agenda for the study session is superintendent update. Dr. Varner.
Lynn gave me 10 minutes, but I think I'll take about an hour and a half because we got so many good things going on during this difficult time, and I just got to continue to praise our food services department and the folks that are going out every day out to our distribution sites. We are pushing over well over 1,000 meals again, almost the same amount of meals that we started with. I think the last count I took was about 22,000 breakfast and lunch that have been served through this difficult time. And just want to thank our chapters. Our chapters are rock stars. They got a lot of difficult things to face each and every day. And I just want to praise all those people out there, our volunteers out there, and our folks that are driving each and every day in our food services that work so hard. So kudos to you guys. Thank you so much for your support. I've received many letters of thanks by a number of folks that just thanking us for pushing through and getting meals out there. And along with that, we have so many people donating, donating through different mechanisms and supports, and working on a big one with Desiree right now, and it's going to be awesome to see. So we're looking forward to working with those folks down in Phoenix. Thank you for those guys. And just a quick update, the USDA grant, we're still working on that. The issue right now is downloading some Power Schools situation so they can have access to addresses and locations for the food to be delivered, but that's coming soon. I want to thank Millie and Art for working on that. We're just dealing with the usual bureaucracy pieces right now, but ADE has approved our grant moving forward, so we're just waiting for that last piece to get done. And as soon as that's done, I'll be the first one on a shouting from the mountaintop because that's awesome for our kids. So that'll be happening. Our next rollout of packets is on Monday. Our teams are getting ready for another 3 weeks worth of work. I want to thank our administrators and our teachers for their hard work, and we'll be delivering those. We'll be getting communication out through our usual media systems the next day or so, but that'll be going out mirroring similar to what we did before, but our packets will be going out with our food as well. So that would be our K-8. Our high schools have working with individual students. We do have a graduation plan, but I'm not going to roll that out tonight. I'm going to leave that to Miss Martin and Miss Stahl to roll that out with their parents, but that's coming that's coming soon. And so I think it's an awesome plan considering our circumstances. So kudos to those teams. And our seniors will be celebrated, and that's so important. And if you're checking out Facebook lately, they're being uploaded on Facebook. We're seeing those beautiful faces and their dreams and aspirations. And I saw Jordan's today, and I did not know that was his plan, but now I do. Only Facebook would tell me about my own kids' plans. But anyways, it's seeing those names coming up. A lot of the kids that we grew up with and known for a while, and it's kind of cool. Um, I'm just thinking about recognition for those kids, and you know what, they deserve it. And they look through their whole careers of graduation, and we got to celebrate them, and we are going to celebrate them. And so that's important for folks to hear, that there is a plan coming, and it's a good plan for our times, and making sure that we honor the shelter in place and things like that. We have a couple barriers that we're working through, but we are going to celebrate our seniors, and that's priority. One of the top priorities for us is, and kudos to the high school staff. They're doing their best to reach our students. There are some, I mentioned earlier, there are some students that have been difficult to reach, whether they moved or changed addresses or switched phone numbers or whatever. We are working our best to reach all those 912 kids. So if you're out there listening to us and you haven't heard from anyone else, please let us know, because we're trying to reach you. And just a final thought on the update, I want to thank. It's been fun working with Larry for the last couple of weeks. We, you know what, we should have been a team all year, huh, Larry? We meet daily, we talk daily, we bounce some ideas off of each other. I kind of give him some historical perspective. We rib each other. Tease each other, and but we're doing well together. I just want the board to know that the transition plan is fully implemented. He's giving me space day to day. I'm giving him space to really look for the future, and we bounce a lot of ideas off of each other, and it's been good. So I just want to let the board know that we are a good team.
All right, Dr. Barner, boy, you said it well. There's been a lot of great work, and one that I just want to mention. I noticed Tashina and her crew, Virgie, and some of these folks hauling wagons full of food, loading the vans, and they get out to families that our normal program doesn't touch. I was able to talk with Tashina about a group of 10, and so that's going to be a huge help for them. And I as well, I'm getting people calling me saying, how can I help?
Yep.
And where can I send a check? What can I do? And that's what I really love about our community. And with the program at this point, which is the McKinney-Vento program, we call it the backpack program. Now it's taken on steroids and is going great guns, working with about, I think, 28 St. Mary's food banks and various other things, getting equipment and materials from Utah and from all over the place. But yeah, they've got it running in full gear, and I really appreciate all they do, because they'll go to COVID homes. They'll go in where not too many people will go, and they are touching a whole bunch of people. And it's those are homes that have our kids in them and our community folks. So I really appreciate them.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I'm meeting friends all the time. Sergeant Howard last Friday from the National Guard delivered some N95s for our drivers and volunteers that are going out each and every day, and meeting some folks from Phoenix that are sending donations our way. There's other donors out there, and we're just blessed. We're just blessed with a giving community and a community of people that we don't know, we haven't met yet, and there'll be a time for celebrating all that when this all becomes distant past, but there's a lot of heroes out there, both within our school district, on this board, and also in multiple communities, including our Navajo Nation. There's so many heroes out there, and thank all of you for doing what you do, whether you're making masks for people or delivering stuff or just donating food to the food banks. And so thank you so much. It's just great to see people come together. It's not a perfect system. Trying to hit as many families as we can. And, if you're a family out there in need, just let us know and we'll do what we can for you. So thank you to all our heroes and, of course, our first responders and health professionals. We always want to thank them as well. So.
Well, Dr. Warner, thank you so much for that report. That's our last agenda item. Unless anyone else has something they'd like to just comment about the update on COVID.
I have some questions. So we do have buses and they do have Wi-Fi. Will our buses be going out to the reservation to help some of the students who do not have internet services?
So Brian and his team did a study, and if Brian, you want to say a little bit more, but our buses are outfitted with Verizon, and Verizon doesn't work very well out there. Our routers, our Verizon routers. Brian has been working with NTUA and Cell One on some other situations, but our buses are not a viable option at this point because of the routers are through Verizon. But we are looking at other things.
Okay. And you did mention, and I want to also, give Tashina Williams, Lynn, and also Virgie, and I know there's a couple teachers that have been going out and out of their way to help our families out in rural communities, taking them food boxes and such. Is there a phone number that is available, not just for student services, but for, I know that Lakeview did post a phone number and hours to call and so forth, but any type of support, do we have phone numbers available to families?
What I'll do is I'll work with Steve. We'll get a central location, and we'll get that out to our families through Facebook and other media. So there is a central phone number to call, particularly for normally the 928-608-4100 comes into our office area here, but sometimes that doesn't get picked up. So we'll work on some other options so we can at least check messages periodically so we can follow up on those calls. Anyone's always welcome to email me at rvarner@pageud.org, and I'd be more than happy to help you out as well.
All right. And then also communication. Have we had some of our communication go out in the Navajo language as far as translation for families who are not quite fluent in English?
Let me follow up on that because Suzanne was working with with Carlos on getting something out. I did not hear if that went out or not. So I'll follow up with Suzanne tomorrow because they were in contact with each other, but I'm not sure if that was addressed. But I'll follow up on that and I'll email you guys tomorrow if that has been done.
Sounds good. And then we also get a listing of how many meals actually go out to each chapter? I know you gave us a total, but I would like to see.
I did send that just the other day to the board, a breakdown. I want to thank Millie for that. Millie gave us a breakdown for each chapter and how many meals were served each day.
Awesome. And I will actually be volunteering tomorrow down at Bitter Spring. So I'm hoping that we have gloves that are available to all of our volunteers to distribute meals and so forth. But I really appreciate that Coppermine chapter has gone out of their way and is meeting families at their bus stops. And I know that other communities are having families come to the chapter houses to pick up their meals. So I just want to say thank you again. And I know our chapter officials have bigger responsibilities, and this is one that they've taken upon themselves as well too. And I just hope that in the future we have these things coordinated in a better fashion. And I know that some community chapters are struggling to actually get volunteers to help distribute meals. So, I mean, that shouldn't be our chapter officials' responsibility. Again, just putting it out there that, you know, we are a school and we should be responsible for some of these things. And then to see that, you know, drivers. So I look forward to seeing Varner out there delivering meals as well too. So thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. That being our last agenda item, the next one is a call for adjournment. That's an action item. I'm calling for the motion.
I'll make a motion.
I
got-
second that motion.
We got motions to adjourn. We got seconds to the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you, folks. Thanks very much.